It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Plan for a rainy day and be self-sufficient.
Okay.
I think that this is an important one. I'll just read the quote and then we can talk about it. It says, Charlie and I never will operate Berkshire in a manner that depends on the kindness of strangers, or even that friends who may be facing liquidity problems of their own. Because realize what Warren is getting at, and I know I keep interrupting it, but I think it's important to give perspective, is that when you're hurting, likely your friends and relatives, because think about it, downturns happen, and this is something we're working on a retirement plan. I was talking with Carter, and I said, look, we have two things. He had a business asset, and then he had the income that comes from the business. And I said, those things will both get impacted at the same time.
That's right.
When if the company comes off the rails, that pension he thinks he's going to get is going to be impacted at the same time that the value of the company is going to go away as well.
Right.
So you have to understand we're all in this together. So I'll repeat it. Charlie and I never will operate Berkshire in a manner that depends on the kindness of strangers or even that of friends who may be facing liquidity problems of their own. During the 2008 and 2009 crisis, we liked having treasury bills, loads of treasury bills, that protected us from having to rely on funding sources such as bank lines or commercial paper. We have intentionally constructed Berkshire in a manner that will allow it to be comfortably withstand economic discontinuities, including such extremes as extended market closures.
This is what he said. We keep emergency reserves, and we do it for the reason that when we need them the most, we need them to be there. And so that's why he operates Berkshire in that way.
And you're going to hear, this is a common theme. I mean, I think Warren, and it follows the theme, if I'm giving a theme for this annual shareholder, he felt like things might be getting a little rich.
Sure.
And then he's also saying, guys, before you get so irrational exuberant, as Alan Greenspan once said, why don't you consider making sure that you have your cash reserves? Because this is going to come up again to make sure that you have rainy day funds and that you're self-sufficient.
And I just want to speak to two other things, and we see this all the time. We talk to a lot of folks who say, guys, I don't need cash reserves. I have a huge income. I just make way more than I spend. I don't need cash reserves because my income can substantiate that. Or someone who says, I don't need cash reserves. I have a lot of equity in my home. I have that piggy bank there.
I'm guilty of charged on that one.
Or even someone who says, I don't need cash reserves. I've got a big portfolio. I will go ahead and make this assessment. No matter who you are out there, I'm willing to bet you don't have cash flow, equity, or assets bigger than Warren Buffett's, and he still keeps a cash reserve. So that's something you should think about.
And here's a perfect, I'm doing this out of order now because we were in chronological, but I think it's important. Here's another quote. It says, at year-end, Berkshire held $116 billion in cash and U.S. Treasury bills, whose average maturity was 88 days. So really ultra short term, up from $86 billion at year-end 2016. This extraordinary liquidity earns only a pittance and is far beyond the level Charlie and I wish Berkshire to have. Our smiles will broaden when we have redeployed Berkshire's excess funds into more productive assets. So be prepared to be underwhelmed with how your cash performs. But here's the truth of the matter, is that this could be very valuable to you in the future. So I wanted to kind of give some planning advice here on what I think, because you read this and you go, so should I put everything in cash?
Yeah.
I mean, what is Warren getting at here with what does this mean for the average investor and what they should be doing? And this is what I thought was interesting, is that if you don't have a cash management plan, everybody's like, cash management? Does he mean budget?
No, he's talking about a budget. It got to be.
Budgets, I like budgets too, but budgets are more, I consider that kind of basic. That's a given. I'm counting on people to already have their basic budget understood. There's great resources out there. A cash management plan looks into the future. It's talking about future dollars, what we're going to do with this, not looking in the rearview mirror like a budget does.
Right.
You can use a budget as a tool to help you with your cash management, but this also gets into what I call forced scarcity. You guys have heard us talk about. You want to have your money prioritized. If you're trying to figure out, do I just keep throwing it in cash? Get the cash reserves filled up. We know we need the cash reserves filled up. That's the 3 to 6 months. If you're pre-retirement, if you're retirement, that number might be substantially higher.
Right.
But for the average person, it's going to be 3 to 6 months. After you do that, you want to start thinking about, how do I get to 15 to 20% of saving for the future, for building financial independence? And then you pile on top of that, how do I pay down my debt so that I truly am going to be debt-free before I reach this financial independence? Because I don't want to have any obligations when I'm considering myself truly financial independent. It's at that point, if you're funding those goals, if you got the cash reserves, you got your financial independence, and you got your debt money being funded, there are a portion of you that still have extra cash. Build it up. There's nothing wrong with having a little extra cash, because guess what happens? When, and this is not in here and I didn't put it in my notes, when it rains opportunity, Warren Buffett talks about this, and this is Warren Buffett stuff. He talks about you don't want to pull a thimble out.
That's right.
You want to pull a bucket. I mean, I can't remember. It depends on which year you read his thing.
Sometimes it's a bathtub.
It's a bathtub. It's a bucket. It doesn't matter. It's a, he just says you need to have the opportunity when everybody else is running for the exits. You're actually trying to get in there and buy some of that stuff that's super cheap. So that's where you'll make a great deal of money if you can set up the other stuff with the cash management plan. He's not saying stay, because we're going to get into the S&P 500 in a minute. I don't want you to misconstrue this and think Warren's just saying build up cash until the perfect time comes. I don't know that he would say that, because based upon his bet that he did with the S&P 500, there's nothing wrong with having some foundational savings that are just happening automatically. Sure. That's why I talk about the forced scarcity. But then you also have a plan for if I have enough success that I can have even more powder money, how do I get beyond just the automatic savings?
And so I want to make sure, I'm going to repeat what you just said to make sure that it really sinks in. If I'm not already saving 15 to 20%, and that's in my 401k, or that's in my IRAs, or that's in a taxable brokerage account, if I'm not already doing that, I don't need to be in the camp of building up cash for the next opportunity. I need to get my automatic savings moving in the right direction right now. That's the order of operations.
I say that just because I always have concerns that we think things are starting to look, I mean, it's been a good run. I mean, it is, but nobody really knows. I mean, this thing, could it go 2 more years, 3 years? We don't know. I don't want you sitting on the sideline, because you're going to see the value of money working for you. That army of dollar bills is tremendously important.
That's right.
And it's hard to time it. I mean, it really is so hard to know how to time. Because remember, Warren has 76% of his money in these private deals. Only 24% is coming from the marketable securities you and I buy.
That's right.
So just be careful and realize that keep some perspective, so you don't think that you're the perfect timer and you're going to be the next Warren Buffett, because he's buying things. We'll go into it deeper, like I said, when he talks about the S&P 500. Well, this ties into it. I mean, Warren obviously meant to go this way, but it says buy based upon value and less on momentum. It's hard to screw up a long-term large cap portfolio. That's my overview, the highlight, because here's the quote.
You left out, just because you left out a word there, and I see it on my thing. You said it's hard to screw up a long-term large cap portfolio. You left out a word there I think that's important. And it's in a point above.
The U.S.
A large cap U.S. The United States.
Yeah,
I think it's so interesting. Warren, I think in the article, he said almost 90% of our investments are made in the United States. America's economic soil remains fertile.
With all the noise that we hear, I mean, I think it's cool that we just came through the Olympics. Mm-hmm. It's basically Warren just giving a USA, USA. He just gave a chant. So that's patriotic. Yeah. I mean, that's pretty cool. Warren, Warren is still, he's out there and he's putting his money where the mouth is on talking about this stuff.